counting down the top 9 things we've learned about podcasting from NuVoodoo research.
This is finding number 8.
There's lots of ways to discover podcasts.
Most of the podcasts that I listen to are through word of mouth, but sometimes I will search the App Store.
Either YouTube or Twitter.
Well, maybe they might be recommended to me.
When people make a recommendation to us, they do it because they know what we like or know.
I think the primary engine of finding new podcasts is the podcasts.
As of October 2022, there are 71 million episodes in Apple Podcasts, and more than 23,000 new podcast titles have been added to the directory in the past 30 days alone.
For producers on a quest to become the next crime junkie, Stuff You Should Know or This American Life, they face the longest of long tails when it comes to building an audience for their podcast.
Here at NuVoodoo, we wanted to help our podcast clients simplify the path out of audience obscurity and to accelerate the podcast discovery journey. Our time-tested approach to market research was designed to measure not only a podcast's audience appeal, but especially its audience potential.
We began with a qualitative study to make sure we had a comprehensive list of the different ways listeners learn about podcasts. Then we followed up with a sample balanced nationwide quantitative study to validate what listeners found most useful when learning about podcasts they hadn't previously known about.
We were especially interested in feedback from the better than 1,500 in our sample who qualified as regular podcast listeners. This segment reported an hour or more of weekly listening.
And better than 2/3 of regular podcast listeners name YouTube as most useful for discovering podcasts. It ranks 9 points higher than either Friends or podcast apps, and at least 13 points higher than social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
YouTube's number 1 rank spans across the entire podcast listening spectrum. It was named most useful by nearly 6 in 10 within the casual podcast listening segment, by around 7 in 10 among moderate listeners, and by nearly 8 in 10 of the heaviest consumers who clock in at 10 hours or more of podcast listening each week.
Word of mouth among peers can be a powerful catalyst for a podcast to become more well-known. 58% of regular listeners name their friends as a useful source for learning about new titles. And 66% recommend podcasts to friends themselves. That number jumps to 81% of heavy listeners.
But word of mouth among listeners overall appears to have slowed, with nearly half finding it rare to have a podcast-related conversation with a friend these days. And better than 6 in 10 in the heaviest listening segment are shying away from podcast chatter as well. One of the industry's most powerful marketing engines, the human buzz agent, appears to need refueling in the form of a bona fide mass appeal hit, such as when Serial first set headphones ablaze in 2014.
Since podcasters can't always rely on their own listeners to create new listeners, let's take a look at the platforms where they can be reached with paid advertising and how each rates for overall ad attention. Google, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook are the most engaging ad platforms, commanding the highest percentage of 5s and 6s on our 6-point ad attention scale. Whether we look at the darker bars on the left, showing the percentage of strong ad engagement among podcast listeners overall, or the lighter bars on the right showing even stronger ad engagement among heavy podcast listeners, these foundational 4 ad channels command highest attention overall to paid advertising.
For nearly a decade, NuVoodoo has been conducting marketing campaigns for audio clients. For video campaigns, we have an exciting new machine learning capability we call contextual AI. That's buzzword bingo for ad tech that verifies how relevant a video is before paid pre-roll runs in front of it. In other words, wherever inventory allows, we make sure that a paid ad about your podcast runs next to video content about podcasts, especially podcasts from a related subject area. These days, the key to success in digital advertising is contextual relevance, and we take it to a whole new level with NuVoodoo Contextual AI. Here's how to get in touch to learn more.
NuVoodoo conducts research studies and manages marketing campaigns for podcasters.
It's easy to get in touch. Drop us a line at tellmemore@nuvoodoo.com.